Time for the KSL In Depth. The hundreds upon hundreds of firefighters working to limit the spread of the Bryan Head fire, not to mention other fires to our south in Arizona, deserve to return home. A Ph.D. candidate at the University of Utah is doing what he can to make sure that happens. Campbell is a geography expert, and he's working on science that might help firefighters find safety zones while they're in the field.
Pretty much every component of fire safety and firefighter safety can be sort of mapped in geographic space. So if you think about where a fire is at a certain time, the fire extent, the fire progression, how it's spreading, what direction, the speed, all of these things can be mapped.
That mapping can pinpoint places where fire and heat will be less intense. It relies on tools that were science fiction just a few decades ago.
We're using a specific type of data too, and it's called LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. And what that does is it's essentially mounted to an aircraft, and as it flies over a given area, it shoots down a bunch of lasers. And so it's kind of like a laser rangefinder in the sense that each one of those lasers can tell how tall something is above the ground. And so you get a sort of a 3D image of, vegetation, of the ground surface, and all of these things. And these are important inputs into kind of fire behavior models and sort of fire danger assessments as well. And so we can find areas where there's very low vegetation based on this LiDAR information, and so we can say, generally speaking, this area is potentially a suitable safety zone because there's very low vegetation cover in this area. And the same thing with escape routes. With LiDAR data, if it's really dense vegetation, it's going to be difficult to walk through that area, or if it's really steep slopes, it's going to be difficult to walk through that area. And so LiDAR information can map that, and then we can kind of translate that into a model for finding the best safety zones and escape routes.
But how do you communicate that dense data to firefighters on the ground?
They're also working on phone apps for firefighters to say, okay, given those safety zone locations and where I am right now, my GPS location, I can potentially just see that on my phone and say, okay, here's the nearest safety zone, here's how long it's going to take me to get there, here's the best route to get there. So I think one perhaps slightly distant goal, but hopeful goal is to get it to a point where individual firefighters can have this information, on their person at all times and be able to figure out the best safety zone, the best escape route.